What's going on, everyone? It's KB, and I love movies. Welcome to another episode of So I Watched That Movie. This one is a long time coming. I am not alone. I am joined by my man Jordon on the right side of me, stage left, right side of me. How's it
I was
going,
gonna
man?
say, going good, man. You're better at that than I would have been trying to figure out left or right there. That's coming from a theater background.
Well, I was gonna say either theater or if you're used to doing presentations or training, you're
hmm
used to doing everything backwards. So I know if I wanted to point to you, I'd do one of
Yeah.
those numbers.
hmm
And like when I would tell people, like, if you're typing on the screen and really I'm
hmm
moving my hand right to left, but on the screen it shows up,
Uh-huh.
you get the idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
But no, I'm
I
excited.
see you got something going on in the background there. What you got?
Well, actually, I didn't realize how much moving butts would be happening in the background with the menu over here. But yeah, it's the menu for Arrow's release of Cruising, which I have right here as well. Yeah, I got the alternate. I usually keep it on that one because I love that cover.
Yeah,
But I actually really like because I forgot this is like kind of like the showdown cover,
yeah.
you know.
Then you got the,
So
as you can see, mine is still in the player. I went back and watched the features during my lunch hour today,
me
just
too.
to reacquaint me because we were supposed to do this a while ago.
Yeah, I think what sparked it, if I'm not mistaken, it was the time that I first did 5 takes,
Hmm.
and I think it was the answer. It was my answer to the question about movie that critics didn't like, but I love, and it was something that I had recently watched for the first time because I had been on a Friedkin kick even before he had passed. So yeah, it's just amazing. It's an amazing movie, and I'm glad because I think the last time I think we are going to do it like back sometimes like summer last year or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And then I got the vid, and it kind of went all downhill from there. So I'm glad we are able to finally get together and do this because I think for the content and I think sometimes when people don't know a movie and they rely on the Rotten Tomatoes and the IMDb's of the
Mhm.
world and they see a poor rating, they don't take it into their own hands to just say, well, let me check it out and form my own opinion. And it
Mhm.
it may have gotten a little bit of an uptick with Freakin's passing, but you're always gonna have, The Exorcist up there is what people know him for. But
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people will be surprised to know if you're like a film appreciator from a technical aspect. A lot of the people that he worked with on The Exorcist ended up on this movie because he likes
Mhm.
to use the same people time and time and again. And if you're a Pacino fan, this might be a blind spot in your um, Pacino watching as far as his filmography. So for those
Right.
reasons alone, I definitely wanted to finally watch the movie myself, which I did, and then definitely be able to talk to you about it. So I'm about to strike this off of my list of movies people told me about, and I haven't watched yet because I've officially watched it. So there you go. Strike through.
Yeah.
Boom.
There you go. That always feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a movie that's just like I think it's kind of gone through a reclamation
Hmm.
project right now in the last few years. I think people have realized because I know we'll get into it because I don't know what kind of questions you have planned for
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
whole thing, but it's kind of something that at the time of its release was understandably so, and even Friedkin understood why there were protests around the film within the
Hmm.
gay community, which I know we haven't gotten to the premise of the movie.
Right.
But yeah, it's something that I think we've realized in retrospect how not only does it still hit home in a lot of ways now, um, but also it's not nearly, if at all, exploitive like I think
No,
that we thought at the time.
no.
And I think it's actually aged very well and kind of a landmark in early queer cinema in a way.
Yeah. And the other thing about it is it's almost become like a symbol for so many different ways that you could look at things.
Mhm.
And we'll get into what the premise is about for those that are watching. The one thing I didn't ask you backstage is Are we going to try to keep this spoiler free, or or there's certain things that we have to get into?
See, I was hoping you would have an answer to that, but
I always
so
have an answer to that. My answer is this: when we want to talk spoilers, I throw that up and we talk spoilers. But we could
right.
keep it as generic as possible for those who may not have seen it, and hopefully that will turn and encourage more people to actually check it out. I think.
Well, I think
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I think we try and keep it spoiler free. I do think that it's a movie that like almost becomes impossible to talk about without spoiling it.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun challenge because there's so much to the movie that when you get towards the back half of the movie, again, I know we haven't really talked about what it's about. It kind of is like so it becomes confounding in a lot of ways that whether or not they work for you or not.
Hmm.
They're kind of hard to not talk about. But again, like I think we should keep it spoiler free, but I think that there might be times where we have to throw the banner up. That's my take.
Yeah, that works. That works. All right. We are not alone. We have a few people join us. Thank you, everyone who's checking us out live. Thank you for everyone on the replay. Feel free to like it if you appreciate what you're viewing and listening to. And let's see who's in the live chat with us. Feel free if you have any questions for either of us. Just chime in, especially if it's about the movie. So try to keep it spoiler free in the chat as well. So we have Adrian James on the check in. We got the monkey with his lovely intro here to the one with the great collection of Blu-rays and Criterions who asked a question about Indiana Jones and his father. I say yes. Yes, it is. Yodo the Magnificent, everyone. Great one. Great
That's a
one.
great one. Thank you, Monkey.
He also let us know that it's been about 10 months since you've been here. So almost a year.
Wow.
Amazing. Amazing. We got Movie Hunter in the house. What's up, my friend? Evening, everyone. Don't forget to hit that like button while you are here. Thank you. Thank you. We got Hollow Notes. What's up?
It's about
Yeah, fucking cruising. Yes, I did. I saw it and then I forgot it and then I brought it in anyway. But at least Jordo got to appreciate it too. So thank you as always. Everyone saying hi to each other. We got Steve in the house saying howdy. What's up? Thank you for everyone hanging out. And like I said before, if you're checking out on the replay, feel free to leave some comments about the movie or about this chat that we're having here. But we're just going to get into it. So I'm going to lead it off by having Jordan just tell us what the movie is about, give us a quick synopsis, and then follow it up with when you first saw it, and then what your initial thoughts and feelings were after watching it.
Yeah, I'll just kind of go off the cuff with the premise. It is a movie from 1980, it's called Cruising, directed by William Friedkin. And it is a movie about a detective played by Al Pacino who in the New York, the NYPD, in New York at this time, there is a string of murders going around in the underground gay nightclub scene, specifically the BDSM leather club scene. And it takes place in the meatpacking district. And it is William Friedkin it was based off of a book, I believe, a novel from like
Hmm.
1970, I believe, that was essentially about the real string of murders that were actually happening. Um, and yeah, Al Pacino goes undercover. He starts to take on this role to a degree where it starts to kind of take over like his mind, not minds. I'm sorry, I'm messing that up a little bit. It's hard to, again, it's a hard movie to not spoil.
I know.
But it is, but it is just an interesting descent into the scene that he is investigating, and
Hmm.
you start to see a different play of like, are there more than one murders in this like crime, in this like this activity that's been going on? Is it just one? Who is it? Especially since everyone's kind of wearing a lot of the similar clothes, like the leather, the the aviator sunglasses, like all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
your mind starts to like, it's kind of like a Rorschach test of like who is that person? Is it this person? Maybe not a Rorschach test, but something along those lines. And yeah,
Yeah. Clever
Most of
use
my
of,
celebrities.
sound too and voices, I'll say that. That you
Oh,
really
yeah.
don't pick up on unless you watch it, like, more than once.
Well, the interesting thing about that is I don't wanna get too ahead of myself, but, like, the protesters were 'cause this movie was protested a lot by the gay community at the time, um, and they would do certain things with to mess up the production, whether it be standing in front of lighting, messing up sound. So they had to go back and dub some of that. But it's so fascinating that it like actually plays in well with the who's who of who's the murderer, and all this, and it's very
Yeah.
interesting.
So when did you first watch it, and what were your initial thoughts and feelings?
I think I watched it about a year and a half ago. I'm not really sure when it was. It was around that time. I had heard a couple of podcasters that I really like talk about it, and I was also really wanting to get into Friedkin a little bit more than, The Exorcist and a couple of his other movies, and I felt like that was definitely around the time that was before I made my first music video and all that kind of stuff. So like I was kind of like really wanting to get dive deeper into great filmmakers' works that were maybe not as well known that people are like coming back to.
Mhm.
So I just decided to give it a shot, especially considering the premise and how much people were really coming back to it and coming back around to it. So I watched it, and my first initial thoughts were it was very I really loved it, but there were some things about it that I was like confused on. Uh, was this something that was intentional? Some of these confusing elements, or was it like a part of it on purpose? I know that there was a lot of editing down that we can get into later. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. Um, but yeah, I really liked it. And then I will say that now that I've come back to it, I think two or three more times since then, it's kind of to me kind of it's not a perfect movie, but it is a perfect movie in the sense that it is like very, very good. I find very little amount of things that haven't aged well. I know that might be subjective, but I think that a lot of it has aged well because especially with how it deals with police and the police force and their tactics.
Mhm.
And
Abuse
that was
of
something
power.
Friedkin, yes, and that was something Friedkin did with the French Connection even. So
Yeah.
like, so I just think it's kind of amazing. It's just kind of like to put it in the letterbox terms, it's kind of a five-star movie for me just because it's so I don't know how we got it. It's a major studio making a movie that's about
Underground
BDSM
culture.
underground. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not exploitive. It's just fascinating that we got this movie, and it was kind of a hit. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. So I love it.
And you mentioned, like, it's not exploitive. It's also for being a lack of a better term, a crime drama about a serial killer. It's not too like it doesn't cross the border into like horror or being very graphic either. A lot of things that take place are in your head. So
Right.
it's kind of like if I see this motion, I assume in my head that someone is being stabbed or killed or whatever the case may be. Kind of like a
Mhm,
lot how the TV cuts of a horror movie is done. Like they cut away in time and you
mhm,
see the reaction on the face so that you know someone was injured or murdered or whatever the case may be. But
mhm.
yeah, it does a good job. We got a couple of people join us. I saw Foz jump in here. It says cruising has a great soundtrack. Yeah, with the germs on it. We're
Yes.
definitely going to talk about the score in this because I find it besides the actual soundtrack, I find like certain parts of score very haunting.
Mhm.
The use of like low effects like bass and everything. My subwoofer was just having fun with it when I watch it
Yes.
because it's like it almost creeps behind you, which gives it
Mhm.
more of a tone. Arrow did a great job with this Blu-ray, by the way. It
It's
gives
great.
you more of a tone of like, someone is on the prowl with the score, but the soundtrack itself definitely. A lot of bathhouses back in that time used to play hardcore punk to set the mood, and they used that appropriately in the movie. They also use besides the overdubbing, they use their ADR sounds very well. So you picked up on
Mhm.
things such as like something as simple as like the bending of a leather jacket or something like
Mhm.
that. Those things were elevated so that you heard it as part of what was going on in the scene. So you ever put on like a nice leather jacket and you start to move the arms and you just feel that creasing?
Mhm.
You heard those sounds. It was beautiful,
Yes.
beautifully done. We also got Scream in the house. Says this scares me. Sounds familiar. Going to have to watch Babe the Pig before bed after you. Oh man, sorry to do that to you, but it it's it's good
It's
in
a
the sense that it's more of a crime drama than, say, a serial killer horror movie, and they really try to keep the detective element of it going throughout the movie, but I was trying to because I'm always thinking of like the perfect double feature in my head. Like, what would I pair this with? And the thing that came to mind for me was Deep Cover, where
Oh,
you
yeah.
have that cop that goes undercover, and sometimes you just get in too deep
Mhm.
so
That's
that
a
things
great way to
get
put it.
blurred very easily. So
That's a great way
that's what I was thinking of when I was watching this for sure. Um, Talking about themes, there were a couple of themes here. There was themes of identity, there was themes of secrecy. We saw that with some of the cops. And like
Mhm.
we already mentioned, there's the theme of this underground culture that a lot of people, growing up in New York, you knew about it, but you never explored it unless you were into that. So it was
Mhm.
something known, but not something seen. And they really took you into it to give you that look into the bars and into the clubs and even down to what certain bandanas on certain pockets meant.
Mhm.
So, how did you feel that it portrayed not just the underground culture, but on a larger scale, like the whole LGBTQ plus community and in particular that subculture?
I feel like it's just so well it's not only well researched, but it to me feels very respectful of
Yes.
its environment.
Yes.
Like, I think that a lot of the things that it's talking about, whether it's like certain terminology um or things like, uh the pocket bandana stuff,
Mhm.
that's so specific that that's the kind of things you can't make up. You know
No.
what I mean? Like, that is so specific that's a real thing. And I think it goes I was watching, I really wanted to watch both of the commentaries because the second commentary on the Blu-ray has one with him, Friedkin, and Mark Kermode, and I love Mark
Mhm.
Kermode, especially since he's a huge Friedkin fan, and he kind of like watching his film journalism and criticism on Friedkin stuff that like kind of opened the doors for me to learn more about and appreciate his work. But I only watched the first one that it was just Friedkin, and he talks about how he actually, because they go into there's a moment in the film where Al Pacino, this is well into like him. I think it's maybe the second or third time we've seen him go to the club or one of the clubs. He shows up on theme night, and the theme night is police is a precinct night.
Precinct night. Yeah.
And that's a very funny scene because he shows up and he's thinking he should be he's in his like black and blue like jeans and all that stuff, and everyone else is dressed like police, and they're saying you got the wrong attitude for precinct night, which is
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
um but in that scene, I think Freakin was like, I would go to theme nights. I showed up and I would strip down to my jockstrap and I would be there for theme nights. And so to bring it back, and he was like, no one hit on me. He was like, I was the ugliest guy at the club. Uh but that's what I mean is like it's more than just being well researched. It's like it's so respectful and like
Mhm.
aware, and it doesn't, even if the camera, like I was listening to, and I'm probably going to reference this a little bit, so I want to go and credit it. There's I don't know if you know the podcast The Rewatchables, but
Mm.
they do like a series of movies that they consider rewatchable, whether that's ones that are kind of objectively rewatchable or niche rewatchable movies like Cruising. And they do
Yeah.
Cruising, and they talk about how there are shots in the movie where they're just so up close to whether that's activities that are going on or individual faces. And
Yeah.
so it just feels like it's the movie is just wanting to linger on these people and not in a way of like, look at this in a judgmental way or whatever. Like Wesley Morris, who's one of the people on that guest on that episode, he was
Uh-huh.
like, it's not like if Clint Eastwood directed Cruising and showed up
Right.
and was like, "What is happening here?"
Right.
You know, like, it's very fly on the wall almost.
Mhm. And,
That's
2
awesome.
things. Well, first, Foz says the bandana in the pocket is still a thing. Yeah, I can
Mhm,
imagine so, and different color, like, bracelets and things like that. Everything is well represented in the movie, and I think the biggest challenge and the thing that they nailed is the adaptation from the book because the book wasn't really reflective of this subculture. It was
mhm,
more of a general tale. So to kind of bridge between the book and open it up for the movie, the proper research was almost necessary if you wanted it to be authentic. And that's the other thing I wanted
mhm,
to talk about was how they really strive to be authentic in a movie. And,
mhm.
you know, same thing. I have friends who are, not only not only gay, not only lesbian, but also within that subculture. And they say, yeah, that is an accurate depiction for then and in
Mhm.
some ways even today. So even
Yeah,
that to me is just great about it.
yeah, and that's it's just so and even though, like, of course, it was 1980, so, like, they didn't have necessarily, like, trans actors and actresses, like, coming up to want like, getting roles and stuff like this,
Mhm.
but even the actors who were playing, at the time, like, I guess it would just been, like, drag, I would say,
Yeah.
or I think they even might use, like, a dated word like transvestite or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, even the actors that are playing those people, the they're playing those roles very respectfully. Like
Yeah.
the scene when one of the sex workers goes to Servino at the beginning of the movie and is like, "Hey, these cops are like not only showing up and bothering us, but they're like actually like harassing and like assaulting us."
Yeah.
And that scene is not played for laughs. That is a scene that
Mm-mm.
probably happens
All the
maybe not every
time.
day because I was gonna say they probably don't want to go to the cops, which understandably so. But that stuff is happening now, and the way that I was rewatching that scene this time around, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like a normal conversation. There's no like even Sorvino's character, even the cops are not written to make fun of, other than the two at the beginning that are taking advantage, and I think we know why because one
Yeah.
of those cops is later seen in the club. Um, like other than that, like all even the cops who are like interacting with these people, they're not disrespecting them really. And of course, maybe that's not realistic in a lot of ways, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I was gonna say something about the cops, but I think you probably nailed it right there, before I go on. Yeah. The
Yeah,
funny thing is I just watched Unforgiven last night.
I saw.
All the things that I have a problem with him besides that's a fine dan great movie, and I have to separate art from artist sometimes and just say, "You know
Yeah,
what? You made a very fine movie, but I don't agree with you."
yeah, he's him in that chair.
Yeah, him in the chair and everything it represents. This makes me wanna turn on Milk after this.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it's very powerful in the sense that you feel like all these things that are happening and you know that it's like something like hatred based behind it. I think
mhm,
that has a lot to do with it. But looking at it with, 2024 eyes, it like I kind of said before, it almost becomes like a symbol for every subculture or every group of people that are being hated on, not just by cops, but being stalked, being hunted, however you want to see it by different people. So Movie Hunter says, "Has Arrow been the only Blu-ray for cruising in the US?" That's a
mm.
good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look that up. But
That's actually that actually seems right. I don't think I've ever seen a regular like because who did it? Like the actual like who was the studio? Warner Brothers.
yeah, it was a Warner Brothers film, but I don't know if they ever put out like an archive or anything like that. the whole
That's
thing
what I'm
is
doing.
you wanted to get this to physical media. According to Blu-ray.com, it is the only Blu-ray in the United States is the Arrow.
God, and it like just came out like in a few last few
Yeah,
years too.
2020.
That's crazy.
And as far as before that, there was a Warner Archive on DVD and
Okay.
a regular deluxe edition on DVD. So Warner had it for the DVD, and then Arrow got it for the Blu-ray because it was probably just stuck on DVD, rotten. Just like
Yeah.
Deep Cover with Criterion, they did the
Yeah.
same thing. Since I had that, had a copy on VHS for years before Arrow, and that was probably a Warner Brothers release. Cool.
It's and see, I think I remember the poster, like the one that you have on the backdrop here. I
Hmm.
think I remember that poster on some VHSs when I'd see it, like because that's a very. I mean, Friedkin was so good about posters,
Yeah,
like and like Al Pacino's face, which that's very interesting because without context, and I don't think it's a spoiler. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's the final frame of the movie. If I'm not mistaken, or one of.
more
Maybe
or
it's
less.
not.
Yeah,
But yeah. So I remember that poster for sure on a VHS tape, even if I don't really remember a Blu-ray or anything or DVD.
there were a couple of scenes. I would say that were very suspenseful, and
Hmm.
you kind of mentioned it before with the club scenes and everything. They made great use of like close-ups, not
Hmm.
just on faces, but sometimes on body parts. Um,
Hmm.
Being a Hitchcock fan, it reminded me of some of his movies where we're going to show you something that the other people in the room may not know.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's not a bomb, but it could be a knife, but or it could be a killer getting ready to attack and they're getting their weapon ready. But
Hmm.
wow, it there was something so like intense and suspenseful about those scenes.
I think honestly, like I think of one specific scene in the film that would be like I feel like almost a direct Hitchcock, like if not like intentional homage, like definitely like something akin to a Hitchcock scene, is the scene in the booth with the you know what I'm saying, the when yeah the
That's what
when
I
they
was
go to
thinking
a
of.
booth. That's very Hitchcock, especially the hand in front of the or the hand with the knife in front of the screen.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, nothing wrong with making a homage to some of the greatest filmmakers of all time, but
Mhm,
I just think what it did was it kind of created this character of tension.
mhm.
So like you get breaks and there's even a little romance in there, which we'll come back and talk about the cast in a little bit. But there's something about building tension to the point that it's almost like current throughout the entire film.
Right.
So even when you have a scene with, a couple, you almost you're waiting for something to go wrong. You're waiting for that tension to build and then something to go awry. I don't know about that.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that we see that a lot, and again, they're trying to avoid spoilers, but I feel like that becomes more and more prevalent as we get through to, like, I think his name's Stuart Richards, I believe, or the guy
Yeah.
he starts following. A lot of that stuff and, like, even to the point where he has a neighbor, because at one point in the movie, Al Pacino, um, when he moves into his apartment for his undercover business or his undercover persona, he ends up befriending a guy that's the next door neighbor or whatever. And to me, even at a certain point with those scenes, you kind of are wondering what's going on and
Yeah.
how's Al Pacino going to be acting. And it's a very psychological movie. It's weird that it's not that scary
Yeah.
because I feel like it should be scarier than in, like, how it actually is done, but it's done so well, it's never like a horror movie. It borders on slasher, I guess, at some points, but it's really not like a scary movie, but it's you should be considering
Almost
its
like an
premise.
address to kill kind of way.
Yes. Very
Which
much
once
so.
again is De Palma, who is always ripping off Hitchcock, but I don't want to get
Hitchcock,
into
yeah.
that.
He's one of
He
those where
he
it's
has
just
moments
like
when he doesn't, but all the rest of the time he does. A
yeah.
couple of comments here. I had it up before. Monkey says, two different artworks made for the cover. I prefer this one. Yeah, this one is very intense, but neither one of them give anything away, which I kind of like, which may
Right.
be the best for marketing. But I think a film like this, if you just know the premise, that either sells or turns your way, depending on how you see
Hmm.
things. Uh, love building films of neighbors that build tension like they did in Stir of Echoes. Yeah, I just watched that the other day. Um, yeah,
Never seen it.
good example. Good example. Since we're dancing around and you just mentioned it again, let's talk characters and acting. What did you think of Pacino's performance individually and then compared to like some of his other well-known roles?
It's interesting because again, to reference a little bit of the podcast I was listening to, the rewatchables, they bring up how this movie comes at such an interesting point for Pacino's career, where like he does both Godfathers, Dog Day Afternoon, a couple other movies, and in the process, again, this movie came out in Cruising came out in 1980,
Hmm.
and he turned down Han Solo. He turned down the father's role in Kramer versus Kramer. He turned down like all these roles, and what he landed on was Cruising, and it's just like so insane that like those sliding doors things where it's like I don't know like what happens if we get like I don't know who plays this role, but the thing about the Pacino role is like I think I think there was like a lot of divide between him and Friedkin because I think Friedkin was like I think if you know anything about Friedkin, his interview he is very like to the point. He does not care. He will tell you like it is. Uh, I don't know if you've ever watched the Nicholas Winding Refn interview that's about Sorcerer, but I could listen to that interview. I've his William Friedkin's interviews are like whale sounds to me. I could just listen to them just like in the background. Like I could just listen to that guy talk shit on people anytime.
Yeah,
Um, but because he earned it. But yeah, he apparently Pacino was like late all the time, and all this stuff, and like, but he felt like Pacino didn't contribute too much to the role. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that Pacino's probably trying to choose, and they even again to reference that podcast, they talk about the very like kind of the most important scene of the movie is when there's a scene in the movie where Pacino is undercover again at the nightclub, and I think he's like starting to like size up a guy, and like they go to the dance floor, and then Pacino just has this wild minute of dancing,
yeah.
and
That's in the
yeah,
background too at a certain point in the menu. You see
oh
him
yeah, and maybe
dancing.
yeah. God, I love those wide shots of like the patrons at the bar, like just
Great
like the tracking
cinematography.
shots.
Great.
But yeah, so that scene, I kind of feel like we actually get him like again. I was referencing the podcast. They talk about how like apparently Pacino kind of was at a certain point in the productions thinking like, what did I get myself into? And I think he was kind of having trouble getting into the role
Yeah.
because there were protests, there were like police, all this stuff. And I think he realized in that moment, in that dance scene in the club, that I because the thing of Freakin' and the casting crew did was like the people that are in the club that are dressed up in the garb, they're partying, they're having fun, they're flirting, whatever, and other things that are not in the movie that we can talk about later. Um, those are actual people of the gay community. So like not only did the movie might have had protesters that were from the community, they also had like double that of people who like wanted to be in the movie. So like and Friedkin employed like the community with his movie, which is another thing to note. But I
Yeah.
feel like that dance sequence really brings Al Pacino's character out. When he starts to really let loose. It's a wild scene,
Yeah.
but I think that's when he kind of becomes comfortable with himself in the role.
And it almost plays into the movie because you go from seeing him be uncomfortable with the assignment to kind of letting
Hmm.
go, and all in a
Hmm.
dance scene. All in a dance scene.
And again, I
Um,
can't. We're not talking spoilers, but there is a feeling I have about that scene that's related to like my theory on the movie. But
how
maybe we
about
can save
this?
it for last.
Why don't we just hold the spoilers for the end? Like on my podcast when we do a review, everything's done, then we kick into the spoilers at the end, and then we'll just throw up the band and we could just let loose because at that point, anything goes.
I like that.
I agree for everything that you said on the most part. Pacino, compared to his other roles, he was in a very interesting place. He was well established. So you have to imagine like being on set, even though it was nighttime for most of it, even the daytime scenes, he's going to draw a crowd.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
I think he was looking for something a little more artistic. And this definitely plays, even though it's a major release, it definitely plays more like an indie film than
mhm.
a major studio one. And it could have been just the script that did it for him, but I think at some point, I don't know if they filmed it linear or not, but there's definitely a point of transformation for his character, and you also see it reflecting in the acting as well. So
Mhm.
if it's not linear, that just speaks to the genius of the man as an actor.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating that Friedkin feels like he did not, contribute much to the role or the creative process because and of course, as much as I love Friedkin, he can say some stuff that I'm like, "Okay, buddy. Like, I love you. You're, like, probably, like, my top 5, 10 guys that's my go-to filmmaker."
Mhm.
It's the same thing with Robert Altman. Like, Robert Altman will say some wild shit, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, "Man, no."
He's like that
Uh,
uncle you're afraid to take somewhere because 'cause you're like, "No, don't embarrass me." He's like, "You're smart,
yeah,
but at the same time, don't embarrass me."
yeah. But, so I think it's very interesting that he feels like Pacino didn't contribute much because I mean, it is a very reserved Pacino role, which is not something that we don't I mean, I know that there is that you could probably find the movie that's the point where Pacino starts to, like, go, like,
Mm.
Pacino and Heat Pacino,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
but this is like I mean, even this coming out post Dog Day Afternoon where he has plenty of yelling and
I
screaming, like,
forgot.
it's just an interesting thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
like, this is such a
not
quiet
bad.
role for him.
Yeah, but I think it's more of a character study, and it plays that way.
Right.
Um, besides him, I wanna talk about 2 characters, and I'll just mention them, and then you could respond. So, the first one I wanna talk about is going through the credits, there's 25 listed actors in this. There's one
Mhm,
woman, and that's Nancy Allen.
mhm.
And for the other 24 men in these roles, she is the lone woman in the cast. And what she brings is a softness to
Mhm.
the other side of Pacino's detective. And she also brings like an easiness to it too. So, what's this? This was the same year as Indiana Jones, right? Raiders, I mean.
God, was it? I'm not like, wait, was it? It might have
Raiders of the
been
Lost Ark was 80?
81. So,
81.
like,
So
right
this was
before
right
she was
before.
filming it, probably.
Yeah. So you have this lone character, and I mean, they could have went anywhere with her. She could have been a hard ass. She could have been, dopey, but she adds kind of like this soft reflection of what his life is outside of
Mhm.
this undercover role. And you see him coming back to needing that softness there for a while.
Right.
And she does a great understated job in the role. The other person, and I hope you know who I'm talking about when I bring his name up, is Joe Spinelli. Do you know Joe
Mhm.
Spinelli?
Of course.
So the funny thing about Joe Spinelli is 1980, and I know this for a fact, same year that he stars in Maniac.
Whoa, yeah.
So you have, for a matter of fact, he was like in 7 different movies. When you're a supporting actor and you're a character actor, you don't have to spend like months on set. You could just do your role, and be out. But just to see the difference in characters, and he just has a way of playing. Anytime I talk to people about Maniac, the first word I go to is sleaze. he
Yeah.
he does sleaze so well, and he's from what I hear, he's a funny, happy-go-lucky guy, but man,
Mhm.
he plays a sleazy character so well.
Well, and I think that's honestly, I know that I agree with you that about the double feature with Deep Cover, but Maniac is also a good double feature with Cruising if you really wanna have a bad night. Like, if you really just wanna, like, need if you want, like, if you're in the mood for 6 showers after 4 hours of that, then,
Yeah,
you know,
do
but
Cruising
no,
and
I
Maniac.
yeah, and the in this movie, it's just, like it's some actors that I don't even expect to see at a movie like this. I mean, there's an Ed O'Neill appearance in this
Yeah,
movie,
yeah, he was a
and I'm just
detective.
like which, I mean, again, goes back to your point about, like, him Friedkin working with people he's worked with before. Because I mean, later they do Blue Chips, which I'm a Blue Chips fan. I don't
Yeah,
care, like, it's a fun movie. It's not great, but it's fun,
yeah.
uh, and so
Fozzie got it. Fozzie got it. What up, brother Dell? Thanks for hanging out with us
so
tonight. Welcome into it. Talking cruising, talking great double features with this movie. If you've seen it, before you came in, I mentioned that Deep Cover, another detective going undercover movie, would be a great. But now we're talking about a character actor in there, Joe Spinelli, who is the serial killer and maniac. He's in this movie too, so I don't know. That would be definitely like I don't know. You got to go watch something wholesome like Disney Nature or something like that after that, for sure. Maybe even after this conversation. Who knows? But the thing about the entire cast is the people you mentioned before. There's a lot of crowd actors who are not acting. They're actually
mhm,
people from the scene and in the culture and everything. But there's also a lot of great character actors, especially from the late 70s, early 80s in here, and they all play their role very well. Um,
right.
James Remar, that's the other one I was trying to remember. He has a little bit
Yeah,
part that I love people who come onto the scene in a movie and just like
mhm.
takes that role and runs with it, and it's like, oh man, you stole the scene. You stole the scene. So he does that well here too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it is kinda crazy, like, the people that are in this movie. It because you think that it's such a both, like, with the fact that the movie is, like, especially now, like, still, like, not that popular,
Hmm.
and also the premise is so gritty and, like, it's not that the environment is gross or and grimy, it's just, like, the movie is just, like, so, like it's underground, so you
Yeah,
kinda feel like
and people aren't used to it for the most part.
so you don't expect to see Ed O'Neill, Sorvino, like, Al
Yeah, Paul
Pacino,
Sorvino. Yeah,
Karen Allen, like, any of those people in this movie,
yeah,
and the seedy undergroundness of it all kind of clouds you. It kind of it's smoke gets in your eyes, and you just forget that this has some of the best actors of the time that it came out. In the
hmm,
movie, and
yeah,
it made $19 million on $11 million budget. That too, that's crazy.
yeah. It's still successful. It's not a movie like that. You don't expect to do gangbusters, but
Yeah.
to cover budget is huge for a movie like that. You mentioned it, and we kind of danced around it before too, but New York or New York City in the 70s almost as a character itself. The clubs, the streets.
Mhm.
The guy had on a Christopher Street shirt, which is just Greenwich Village
Oh,
personified.
cool.
Um, I don't know. I was talking with my son over the weekend, and I was showing him my list that I have for Tim Talks Talkies top 25 of the 70s, and
Mhm.
came to the conclusion he'd never seen Shaft. So I'm like, "Oh,
Whoa.
we gotta put this on right now. What are we talking? We just gotta watch it." I was like, "94
Yeah.
minutes of your time." So I put on Shaft, and if you've seen it, of course, it's basically crane shots. You're right in
Mhm.
42nd Street, right in the Deuce, but what I like about it is it's 1970s gritty, grimy New York City.
Mm.
You can't go there now and see the same thing because, it's already been bought by the Japanese or Chinese and it's been Disneyfied, so it doesn't look the same. And you get that impression here, whether they're in the
Hmm.
park or they're in the meatpacking district, wherever they are, you get the griminess of the city that, was pretty representative there, except West Village. West Village still looks the same when you go there.
Right.
The storefronts are different. But yeah, for sure.
I mean, even I mean, I've never been to Columbia University, but like even that surrounding area is just kind of, you don't really get a university vibe, even though, I mean, I guess they filmed on location there. I'm not really sure. That's something I don't really actually know, but
It
I know
probably
that
did.
I
That's
think,
his style.
yeah.
Like, he
So
shot
like,
in
I mean,
Georgetown for The Exorcist, so, that's his
right.
style.
So like, I mean, even that isn't like the prettiest, like, you know,
Mm-mm.
scenery. I think when he actually goes to, like, again, not spoiling anything, but like he goes to the, you know, under the bridge towards the end of the movie to with Stewart, I think it's his name, Richards, I think is his name. That even like this was like wooded, like, or not wooded, but like very tree heavy and like and all that kind of stuff. And it's not very pretty looking. Even I mean, even if it's at night, I know that it's
Mhm.
nighttime, but still though, it's next to a university more or less, and
Yeah.
it doesn't look the best. Um,
Dell says, "I have not seen Cruising or Maniac, but I know Joe Spinelli from, a number of other movies." Yeah. He did 7 of them in that year alone, so I know his filmography credits is, like, mad long. But, yeah, he's
yeah.
a good character actor for sure. I would say, um oops, I'm about to delete all my notes. Don't do that. I don't know how to make this go away.
Did you delete them?
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep it up on screen. I gotta confirm it. But anyway, I don't want to do that. Hold up. Pause for the cause here.
You want me to read this quote that I thought was really interesting while you're doing that?
Please do, because I need to copy all this before I really delete it.
There's a critic that was kind of like the beginning of like the reclamation of cruising. Um, his name's Nathan Lee. He was a part of he wrote for the Village Voice, and I'm gonna have to edit some words here because I don't want to like say too much to scare folks away. But I just thought it was a really interesting quote, and this is from I believe 2006 or seven. This quote, it was from a review he was doing years later. It says cruising is a lurid fever dream of popper fumes, color coded pocket hankies, hardcore disco frottage, and Crisco coated forearms. Nowadays, when the naughtiest thing you can do in a New York gay club is light a cigarette, it's bracing. And let's admit it, it's hot. To travel back to a moment when having sex in public was as blasé as ordering a Red Bull.
Yeah,
And that is a great quote that I just like saw. I came across in like again that podcast, and
yeah,
it's like I have to explain that quote because it's just so good and it perfectly defines the movie, but except it leaves a lot to go after as well if you've never seen it.
yeah. We got Caveman in the house. What's up? Please don't cruise out of here before you hit the like
Nice.
button. Haha, humor. We like that. A couple more places to go, and then we'll get into like full spoilers here. Um, we mentioned the controversies, we mentioned the character development. So, what do you think, as far as if you had to compare this to like other films like it? Like I mentioned before, Deep Cover, just other like crime dramas or movies where there's a question of identity or secrecy. How do you How would you, compare it, or what would you compare it to if you had to?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of different routes you can go. I mean, if you want to stay in the same line as Friedkin, you could say that in terms of the police corruption as French Connection. I think that that would play. I mean, I think you get the other side of this because in French Connection, you're solely focused on Popeye Doyle and
Mhm.
like you're in his corruption the whole time. Whereas like I think Cruising, you're seeing a someone branch off from it or stay within it, but I don't know how to describe that. But like
Yeah,
Cruising is almost like more of like a third party perspective on the corruption, like especially things like the interrogation scene is like what in the world is going on, which the interrogation scene, if you've seen Cruising, is it is a scene and a half, I'll tell you that. So I mean, like, if you wanted to go in the corruption route, I think I think that would be a good place to go. But in terms of identity, I mean, like, see, I was struggling with that. It's funny you're asking me that question because I've been kind of thinking like, what are other movies like this where a character might lose themselves and I'm trying to think of it. I know there's 1,000 examples, and for some reason, I was honestly thinking about this before. I didn't even know you were gonna ask this question.
Oh, really?
If you have an example, maybe I can like hop off of that and like figure out something to follow up with. But right now, I don't have one, but I know that I will if you like name something.
I was trying to come up with one as far as like identity because
Hmm.
that's how deep cover came to me because I imagine that happens a lot of times with people that go undercover and you start to question things not only about the individual but about the thing that they're doing. Um,
Hmm.
Here's an interesting one. Just what I know of cruising. How about Midnight Cowboy?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely. I mean, I feel like um, that almost has a sweeter touch to it than
Hmm.
cruising does, but I can definitely see that, especially like um, Midnight Cowboy, man. Like I watched that for the first time, and like all I knew about Midnight Cowboy was the actors that were in it, and I'm walking here. And I watched the movie, and I was like, "This is
Surprise!
bizarre. This movie is bizarre in a good way." I like Midnight Cowboy a lot, but
Yeah.
that is a strange movie. That last half at that big party scene is like, dude, I was not ready. But I
Hmm.
could see that, especially the themes, since Midnight Cowboy does kind of play with sexuality in a way that's it's kind of ambiguous, but it's definitely something that I think it was. I think it's pretty ambiguous played that way, even though the filmmaker was gay.
The Monkey says Blowout with Karen Allen in that as well. That's another good one. My favorite fish is here. Rush with Jason Patrick and Jennifer Jason Lee.
Oh yeah,
That's an interesting one. I like that one.
what's that thing?
Thanks for popping in the chat here, Fish. Good to see you.
I mean,
Not
Face Off,
yeah, identity for sure. Identity is
um,
definitely explored there. I gotta watch that. I got the
the Kino 4K.
yeah, I got that. I haven't cracked it open yet. I'm so bad. Not so much not so much a movie, but because there's literally a direct homage to it. Do you watch American Horror Story?
I try to watch
It's
American Horror
fallen
Story.
off, but there was a season, like, literally, it might as well have been called, like, the cruising thing, because like, the whole murder mystery thing was based on cruising, and there was an interrogation scene very similar to the interrogation scene in cruising as well. So,
Yeah, that actually. So, where did I read that? I read that today, and I was like, "Are you serious?" And I think it's the American Horror Story NYC. I think is the season that it's in,
they do a
maybe.
lot of that with that show, and it's funny because, like, my kids, especially my son, he'll watch that, and then he'll get the connection or somebody will tell him the connection, then he's like, "Hey, have you ever seen blah, blah, blah?" I'm like, "Of course." He's like, "Oh, we should watch that sometime." And that's a reason why, because of the show. It's kinda like how Glee turned a lot of people on to music through their mashups or something. Same creator, by
Right.
the way.
Yeah, like Ryan Murphy is someone that I struggle with a little bit. I
Yeah.
think that in a lot of ways, I think the things that I've been most interested in, I've watched the most of Ryan Murphy stuff that I've liked has been I like Pose a lot. I haven't finished Pose, but I think that's a really good show, and I think that's a little bit more in line of like what I like from him.
Mhm.
I did watch half of the summer camp season, and I thought that was pretty fun. But then when they left the summer camp, I got less interested in it.
Mhm.
But there are some seasons of that show where I'm like, there's another season like you're talking about with the cruising and NYC comparison, where that was like, wait, that whole season's based off of this movie, and I can't remember
Yeah.
what it is. I'm like, that's at least cool enough to like know that like someone's gonna see that and think, oh, I should go watch that movie, and I think that that's worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if
Even
it's
if you
not
find
always
out
for me.
about it later on.
But also the Departed
That's what I
is
was
a good
gonna
one.
say,
Okay.
because same thing, undercover cop, identity issues. Coming
Yeah,
out on 4K soon. So happy about that.
I am so happy about it. I
Yeah.
'Cause, like, it's been sitting in my cart for so long to buy the Blu-ray finally, because 'cause I've just never it's one of those where it's like, I'm not always one to rely on streaming,
Yeah,
but it's one of those where it's like, I'm gonna keep allowing myself to watch it on streaming because I know that it will get upgraded.
yeah.
Like, so I just refuse to buy it for so long, and then
I have one of those triple packs that had Goodfellas, Aviator, and that in it, and that's how I've had The
mhm.
Departed for the longest time. And what I like is none of the movies shared a disc, so there were 3 separate discs in there.
Oh, cool.
So I'm like, "Oh, okay, so at least I know it's at least the highest quality that a Blu-ray could be." But yeah, that 4K might have to be a day one, especially being a steelbook. I like to get steelbooks up front.
Yeah.
Um, so last question, and we kind of alluded to this before, but let's talk more about it right now as far as, like, I don't know about, like, cult following over the years or whatever, but watching it today, it has a legacy, and it's a lot
Mhm.
more than Friedkin and, people trying to go through his filmography with his passing or whatever. But what do you think about, like, the events in the film, how it was looked at then compared to how it's looked as now, especially when it comes to the symbolism that it can stand for even today? You mentioned that before, but, go more into it now in detail.
I mean, I think that, like I said, I think we're looking back on it, and in so many ways, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's the actual subculture or just the actual queer community itself, or we're actually talking about, like, again, like, look at the NYPD and how they, so many years later handle the Central Park jogger case,
Mhm.
it's that stuff. There are still queer people getting killed every day, and so I think that, like, I think we're looking back on it, and of course, I would love to see this sound. I'm not. This doesn't. I'm not trying to say this in a mean way. I'm saying in a genuine way. If there are people who are a little more they're a little more reactionary to things like this, that aren't, that are more inclined to respond quickly to something without thinking about it. I would like to see their reaction to this movie, if that makes sense, because I would like to see, because, like, I'm someone who can go into this and, like, with an open mind and be able to recontextualize it, and I think that so many people in this chat, you and so many others that I know, could do that. But I'd like to see someone who might not be as quick, not be able to do that as well, watch this movie and see what their reaction is. And I mean that in, like, a positive way, because I'd like to see, you know, because I just think it's aged well in terms of the themes. Like, like, rewatching it again. I was just like, nothing about this is, like, really aged. Like, it's still stuff that's happening, like, whether that's, like, police mistreatment or, killers that are, I mean, honestly, if anything's not accurate about the movie, it's that the police. Sorry, I'm becoming I might as well be in body count right now. Um, but, like, I mean, like, if anything's inaccurate, it might be that the police are almost too caring about this whole thing. But that being, especially the time period, but
Yeah.
but
It was getting big attention, and,
yes.
they showed things like the New York papers, like the Daily News and all that. So when a story like that is always on the front page of the news, sometimes that's the only times you get the NYPD to pay attention, especially
Mhm.
when it's reaching the level of detectives and all that. So, um, yeah, yeah, and like I said, it doesn't have to be an underground culture today. It could be a group of people. It could be a group of people based on their religion.
Mhm.
You're getting all types of hate, whether it's online or in person. So this could
Mhm.
happen today to any group, any culture, any subculture. And the sad thing
Mhm.
is, it's totally reflective as far as either people being a part of that and also having that hate, or just the way
Mhm.
it's being handled. Sad but true. I know
Yeah.
some people were gonna drop off. I see Dell left. He said, "I'm gonna cut before spoilers. Enjoy the rest of the stream." Thank you,
Oh,
thank you.
later, Dell. Thank you. I do
Um,
want to say the soundtrack is really so good.
yeah,
The soundtrack
yeah,
is so good, and me and my DJ myself. I went on Discogs and I've been eyeing it for so long. And
really.
Waxwork Records did a re-release, like a release of it, but
Shout out
like
to Waxwork.
it's out of print and it's like now it's $150 on Discogs. It was 100 before. And there's
Yeah,
like 3 copies. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna do it right now because I'm not even DJing right now because we're just taking a little break. But it's just like I just kind of want it for me. It's just so good. It's
do you
just
think
such a
it
good
went up
soundtrack.
with his, with Friedkin's passing?
Honestly, it could. I don't think I've checked on it since he passed, so I bet it did, honestly.
Yeah,
Because when I checked before, it was around 100, and I don't really go over 100, you know, if I'm really wanting to get a record I don't have. And also, the soundtrack is like 20 something tracks long, so like
yeah.
it's worth it in a way, but not $150 worth it.
I think it's kind of a combination of the soundtrack and the score, and there's a lot of songs on there that were made just for the movie. So,
Hmm.
Steve says, "Just ordered the movie. I'll catch it Friday. Have a good night."
Hell
Thank
yeah,
you. Come back and,
enjoy it.
hopefully watch our spoilers to see what you agree with after you watch the movie. Um,
Enjoy it. It's a great
yeah,
movie.
definitely. Okay, Monkey says, "Soundtrack may be so good, but nothing can beat the soundtrack to The Lost Boys." Funny. Alright, so, let's get into some spoilers. I'm gonna throw up this, little thing here. Your name's still showing. So, I just wanna be able to give everyone who's I wanna see a few numbers drop in the top left so that I know we're not gonna spoil it for anyone. If you're still here, you've seen it, you don't care, um, but there's different things that we wanna talk about. So,
Mhm.
last chance. If you're just listening, this is your time to turn it off. If you haven't seen it, I think I've given you enough fair warning. Okay.
Go watch it. It's great.
Yes, please go grab the Arrow, Blu-ray. Check it out. Great movie. All right, spoiler talk. Did he do it?
I mean, look. So that's the thing. I I think that I don't know that he did all of them.
Mhm.
Right. I don't think that I think that the movie does a really good job of honest, I think if anything, if the movie takes any stance, it's that there are more than one killer.
Yeah.
And honestly, that goes back to something that's aged well, is that there are plenty of people that are killing these people, to this day. So I don't think that it's one killer. I'll say
Mhm.
that. That is my hard theory and stance. Um, but in terms of I think that which one is his real character's name, not his undercover name?
Steve Burns,
Steve Burns is his detective.
not John
John
Forbes. That's
Forbes. John
John
Forbes.
Forbes was the undercover name. He
So
was a
well, either
John.
no matter what, yeah, yeah, yeah. Good call. I didn't think about that. I think he killed someone, at least one of them. I think so. And go ahead. What do you think?
I think he reached a point where and once again it happens, the undercover cop becomes a drug dealer. In this case, he became the serial killer, and he was the one that killed Stewart at the end.
Hmm.
But and this is straight from the features, they use past victims to play future killers. So it was
Right,
to give you the impression that either anyone can be the killer and it's going to be left unresolved, or that it's just a representation of the killings going on and there's no true killers. It's just, it could be you, it could be me, it could be anyone.
right.
So I think it was one of those two things that it was supposed to represent.
Yeah, I think that if he did do anything other than the Stewart, murder, which he didn't murder him actually, because I think he lives right because he's in the hospital bed, and
Hmm.
so we don't actually see him kill anyone.
Right.
Um, but the thing is, you think about when Servino first asks him, "Do you want to be a part of this case?" He says, "Yeah, I love it." You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
there's a lot to read in the movie, and the movie rewards a lot of rewatches. I'll say that. I don't know
Yeah,
how many times you've gone back and watched it yet, or if it's just been the one time, but it is a very good rewatch movie. Not just because it's entertaining, and I think a lot of the so many scenes are just so fun to watch and go back
yeah,
to, but like there's a lot in there that you can kind of unpack. Um, but I think and that's what I wanted to get into about the dance scene, is because I think that if he did do it, I think the dance scene is kind of tragic. It's kind of a funny scene too, but like if you like are looking at it from the perspective of someone who, that might have killed at least one of these people, I think that it is very like it's kind of a sad scene. He's kind of like allowing himself to be comfortable within these people, and
hmm
yet he's also hurting. You know what I mean? So it's just like it's a read that I don't really necessarily know if I fully commit to, but it's a read that I've had. You know what I mean?
The other thing, and this is what I thought when I first watched it in the summer, is that the last place you see him before he ends up meeting with Stu is finding Stu's stuff in the closet. What's
Hmm.
to say he didn't take the hat, he didn't take the jacket, he didn't take the aviator glasses, because you never see any of those three again. When they meet up at the park at night, he's just regular Stu.
Hmm.
So if he didn't do it, but he had some fascination or some attraction to dude, because he was straight, stalking him
Hmm.
in scenes before that. Why wouldn't he take
Hmm.
the jacket and the glasses and the hat? And because I watch too many horror movies, they always talk about transfer of evil or transfer of power. Was it transferred to him? And by Nancy Allen's character putting on, is it being transferred to her? Is that what he's looking at through the reflection of the mirror? And then he's
Hmm.
looking at us saying, it could be you. It could be like a it follows thing. Who knows?
Well, and I think that mirror scene is so crucial. I think it's like one of Friedkin's like best final shots to me, because like you see him looking in the mirror, or in this case, or to us, the audience,
Yeah.
and then it dissolves into the harbor where the bodies were found,
Yeah,
or the body
because
parts
it's
were found.
now starting all over again.
And another thing that's aged very well is that this stuff doesn't stop, whether it's a murder on a
Yeah.
certain community or anything.
You wrapped up the
Um,
case, but the murders continue. And you also
and
see
also,
that leather jacket figure walking into the club from behind,
yes.
and it looks just like Pacino, or it looks
Hmm.
just like the guy in the beginning. There's no way to tell.
Because Sorvino tells them in the beginning the killer is after men who look like you.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's 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 just really interesting, and I I don't think that this is necessarily a flaw of the movie, but because I don't know if it's intentional or not. But like I don't even know that the movie really knows who the killer is, and I don't
Friedkin says
necessarily mean that.
he wants it left open. He's like, you tell me who the killer is. So once
Right.
you say that, it's like there's no true killer.
Yeah, and that's fine. And another thing is, when it goes back to like movies about corrupt cops getting too deep into it, I like that the movie doesn't tell us, because I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of corrupt cop movies are
Yeah, I don't
like,
like
now
bold on that kind of
now
story.
I mean, like, yeah, like, I mean, and, like, now he's definitely, a murderer or a drug dealer or whatever, and in this movie, it's like, we don't know.
And a detective, he got taken off the beat for that too. So, a little promotion in the process.
Yeah.
If anyone who's still in the chat or still watching, have any other comments to contribute, please don't put it in the chat. You've been good so far, but I'm going to take off the banner unless there's other things you want to talk about here. Those are the main things that I wanted to cover.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't really have anything spoiler-wise. No, I
Okay.
think that's it. I think we just had to get it out of our system.
Yeah. Because I was
Um,
like, I was just gonna ask you afterwards. After we're
yeah.
done with the live stream, I was just gonna pose it to you that way. But yeah,
Do
this
you
is
like
a
the movie?
I did very
Okay.
much. I guess I should have said that up front, because um otherwise I would have sold this off already. But
Yeah.
it definitely, and we said this during the spoilers, I'll just repeat it here, that it definitely benefits from rewatches. So if it's
Mhm.
something, I don't even think it's streaming anywhere, but If it's something you were kind of leery about picking up, and I understand some people are sensitive about subject matter or whatever, but like we said before, it's respectful to the watcher. It's also respectful to the culture as well. I would say pick it up and do yourself a favor and at
Mhm.
least watch it twice.
Yeah.
Watch it at
It-
least twice without the commentary. If you want to go back in for a third time and dive into the two commentaries, that's fine. But I would
yeah.
say watch it commentary free twice, because you're gonna pick up
Yes.
things
I
the
think it's a good
second
call.
time that you didn't see the first time.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's a good call because I think that there's something I was gonna say. It was about there's like a couple of things I have a problem with this home release. It's like, and this the disc is great and all that, and the features are great, but they changed. When I first watched it, I watched it on Max. I don't know if it's streaming anymore at all. I think they might. I don't know if they've taken it off or what. But I watched it on HBO Max at the time, and the title cards were different and they were better. The title
Oh,
cards where they did, and I'm a big sucker for this stuff. We all love a good title card sequence.
yeah, yeah.
But like I think from what I remember, it might be on YouTube. It's a shot of the harbor, right before they find the body parts, and cruising in big letters comes across the screen, and
I'm
like
gonna go
it's
look for that
really
after
cool
this. I'm gonna look for
because
that.
in the Arrow release, it's like it pops up. Which the title sequence in the Arrow release is fine. It's good. It's
Yeah.
just it's not that big. Like I love a big like giant title card.
Yeah, I
I'm a
wonder
big
why they
sucker for
changed
that.
it.
I don't know. I mean, it had to been Friedkin because I think he had a hand in that Blu-ray because I think he or that restoration because
Yeah.
he didn't pass away at the time and because I don't know when that Mark Kermode commentary was done. It's brand new, so I guess they did it for the Arrow release.
Yeah, the documentary that he had by himself was, um I think that was archival, and
Mhm.
then the one he did with Mark Kermode is the new one for the Blu-ray release. So,
So he may talk about the title card, and I didn't listen to that commentary. I need to go back
yeah,
and
that's the one I'm excited to go back and, listen to. What I did was I watched it to the end, and then I went back a chapter to the last one before the credits, and I watched it with the commentary with both of them. And I mean, he was nerding out hard with Freaking
I
there,
bet.
so I could just imagine what the whole thing would be like to listen to. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. Welcome
Do
back,
you
Movie Hunter.
oh, people come back. That's cool. Um, where does it land in your, does it is it like a favorite Friedkin, or is it kind of like but right below your tops, or is it like more in the middle? Like how do you feel about it?
I would place it right in the middle. Um, I would have to look at his whole filmography to get a better thing. And the other thing is I'm still going through a lot of his movies, you
He's
know.
got a lot.
Yeah. Um, just based on his stuff that he directed. Bug is up there, Rules of Engagement. Um, I would put it above The Hunted for sure. Not
I
above Blue
yeah,
Chip, not above Live and Die in LA. I
oh
got the
yeah,
keynote for that too. That one is
it's a great
um
4K.
yeah, I would put it right in the middle because there's things that like some of his smaller later stuff that I would rank lower. But
Mhm.
definitely you got the biggies up top, The Exorcist, The French Connection.
Of course.
Um, I would even put it above Boys in the Band.
Yeah, I mean, actually haven't gotten to Boys in the Band yet. That's actually one I've gotta get to.
I haven't seen
Um,
that since VHS days, so I don't even
I'm
know
really
what type of release it has besides probably DVD. Let's see.
well oh, that's right, I was thinking
VHS,
about,
DVD. It was released on Blu-ray in 2015. What were you gonna say?
well, at first I was thinking you were talking about the 12 Angry Men remake, but then I realized that's on the 4K and the Kino,
Yeah.
which I gotta get still, because I've never actually seen his remake. I'm actually a big Killer Joe fan.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
that movie is just a wild movie, and I think because it's the same. Who is the writer? It's the guy who's married to Carrie Coon. He's the
Tracy
writer
Letts.
of yes. He wrote Bug and Killer Joe, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
but I really love Killer Joe. But Bug I liked a lot. I need to revisit it. It's gonna be one that I'll have to see how I feel on rewatches. It's not one of my favorites. I think my favorites are. I'm a big Sorcerer fan. Um, Sorcerer is up there. Exorcist is up there. To Live and Die in L.A. Cruising. And probably French Connection. That'd probably be my like top five.
Yeah.
I love
Same.
Blue Chips though.
Yeah. I love hearing that. I remember
Blue
when that
Chips
came out. I was I was I still there? No, I was living in Orlando at the time, so
Mhm.
Shaq and Penny was pretty much everything to that town.
It's just like a movie that like it's not great. It's not like it's not the
But it's
best
a
movie. It's
sports
definitely not.
drama.
It's a sports drama, and like there's a lot of like Friedkin's like pessimism in the movie. Like it's a little bit more. It's not just Miracle, It's not
Mhm.
Remember the Titans. It's pretty like it's got a negative view on the thing he's talking about. Pretty strong.
Yeah.
Um,
It actually
and
opened
I
up a
just
lot of people's eyes to things that we just thought everybody knew. So,
mhm,
I had friends who, you know, got college offers on top of duffel bags of money.
mhm.
So, I
Yeah,
don't know.
and I love that movie. Blue Chips is like a great one. So, of
Yeah. But let's wrap this up. I want to thank you for
course.
telling me to watch this, encouraging me to watch this. Definitely worth the wait to discuss
Yeah,
it. Um, always great to add something to the Arrow collection up there.
of
Um,
course.
this is funny enough, seeing not Powers Booth, the guy who played, I'm gonna have to go back now.
I know you're talking about.
The guy who was, I want to call him Ajax because he was Ajax in the Warriors. But
Yeah.
it was good to see him, and it made me want to crack open my Warriors 4K that I have on the shelf there. So I'll be doing that before long.
Have you watched
Um,
it yet?
no, I haven't. Oh,
It's great.
Remar. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
Remar was Ajax in Warriors. So, uh, oh, what a weird question, Monkey. All right, we're gonna end with this. Thoughts on the original ending of Poltergeist, the ending with Heather Rock instead of the stand-in. I'm just upset that they still decided to finish that production without her. Um,
She's a
I
little
just
girl.
think it was done in poor class. I think he should have respected that and done a rewrite to like not have a stand-in there. That's
Is that the little
what I
girl?
yeah, little girl who died. Ooh, what is the name of that show? It's not Curse Films, but there's this thing, I think it was on Shutter, and it talks about
Mhm.
different movies that were cursed. But yeah, they did one on Poltergeist 3. Well, the
I've
Poltergeist
watched that
franchise.
one.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's good, and that's a sad story. I need to get more into the Poltergeist movies. So,
Yeah. All right. We're calling this an end. I want to thank my guest again. Jordon's Video Village. Where can they find you, my friend?
my Instagram is Jordo's Video Village. I don't use it all the time, but it is there. Actually, I should maybe I should DM this to you, but I did direct a music video. Maybe I can send it to you. You can drop it in the info, but hit that music video up and see what you think of it. I'm really proud of it, and I'll have other stuff down the pipeline this year. So for that, in
Yes,
terms
sir.
of film,
Yes, sir. Thank you again for joining us. And as I always say, go watch a movie. Have a good night, everyone.
later.